if you're watching this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. All right, here we go. Black men, black men, black men. Y'all are really trying it. Okay? Now, I'm not going to even bother to go down the list. I just want to touch on a couple of things. Okay? Because I already made a video about Michael Eric Dyson and his text messages to that white woman, and then now he wants to call her a racist when we said what she was saying before was a racist. No, you was flirting with her. And like I told y'all, I do not like when black people put us in these positions, because we have to be very careful how we speak about other black people in public. Because the larger white world and non-black world loves to see us fight. They get joy out of that. Just like they resent when we get along. I've seen that just in like day-to-day kind of things, right? And if your parents didn't teach you that, I need you to learn that now, okay? And then there's some people that leave us no fucking choice. Here we go. So, this week, I think it was maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, on Tavis Smiley, he had a pollster, a man who runs polls about the patterns of black voting. His name is Dr. Christopher Sebastian. If you want to look him up, please do. Dr. Christopher Sebastian Parker. Sorry. Dr. Christopher Sebastian Parker. I don't want y'all to think I'm making this stuff up. He works in the Department of Political Science as a professor at UC Santa Barbara. Okay? Like I said, he does polls on African Americans and voting patterns, and he was there specifically to talk about the recent studies they've done with black males in this upcoming election, right? So, we all know that the narrative, and it's not just a narrative, it seems to be true, that black men, overwhelmingly compared to years prior, okay, are actively not voting for Democrats, especially Kamala. And he was looking at black male turnout for Harris versus Trump, okay? This is a black man doing this research. So the more black men make, according to his findings, the more likely they are to support Kamala. Now, we also have to consider the racial wealth gap in this country. Just putting that out there. So that should tell you a lot, okay? Now, age and black male support, as far as that was concerned, he said young black men were statistically significant. Young black men, we're talking about the voting population. So he said between ages 18 and 30, black men are less likely to support Kamala, and not simply less likely to support her, and more likely to vote for Trump. Okay? Now, so Tavis asked him, well, like, why is that? Do you have any idea? And the professor was like, well, you know, we were specific in our questions and things like that. He said, but I can only speculate motive. And he said, to be honest, I think they identify with Trump's bravado. He's unapologetic. And quite frankly, they like his misogyny or identify with it. That's a quote. To which Tavis quickly responded, and that ain't cute. Okay, now let's deal with that, right? So, some of his predictors in terms of polling and expectations was like, if you voted in 2020 as a black man, you're most likely to support Kamala. He said they were very specific with the question how black men perceive Trump as a threat and if he's going to destroy the country. And they worded it like that because that's a big critique, that he's going to destroy any progress, right? He said most black men do believe that based on the surveys, but not those in a certain demographic, okay, that 18 to 30 group, all right? And that was before I could get it out my mouth. He was like, one of the upsides it is that they're less likely to turn out the vote. And I said, yup. I was just thinking, I was like, yeah, but that group, we already know how this goes. But anyway, nevertheless, so, you know, Tavis Smiley did ask him, because he was like, I'm concerned about this mode of thinking, right? That they relate to his misogyny and bravado. And he said that's an indictment on the people raising them. And he goes, and that's us. You know, like he was saying, that's us as black men. Yes, it is an indictment. And I also think in an attempt not to jump to the blaming black women for everything that Tavis Smiley was trying to avoid, and Dr. Parker was too. So this is my take on it. I also think it's a reflection of how black men are not raising their sons the way they should be. And when I say raising, I don't mean like people know who their father is or they come around. What I mean is like their negligence and or perpetual disrespect, undermining, verbal, occasionally physical abuse of their mothers is the example that they're given and for some reason identify with. So when Barack Obama made that, we're going to get into that in a second because I got something for his ass. But when Barack Obama said that it is the women who raise us, when, there are attacks on you, it's the women who are out marching and protesting on your behalf. And it seems that y'all are being bothered that a woman is president, and that's a problem. He was not all wrong, right? He wasn't, but I'm going to get to that in a second. Granted, young black men, as they pointed out, are not a monolith. He said there is a class element, that black men who are working class identify with Trump's thinking the most. My take on that is that's also true with white men, but we have a lot more at stake, right? We have a lot more at stake. I mean, the majority of the country is not individuals that are rich. But black people have a lot more at stake, and that says something. The less education you had, the more likely you are to identify with Trump. He knows that. He knows that people who know him said, I don't take these people seriously. They are just a means to an end. Project 2025 would allow him to be a dictator. That's why he was up there talking to these people saying, y'all won't have to worry about voting after this last time. He's telling y'all who he is. The fuck out of here. He said those in the middle and upper middle class are less likely. Once again, we know that's a smaller portion of the African American population, right? Because quite frankly, the middle class, I don't know where that exists. Okay? I don't know. I still to this day don't understand what middle class is in New York. I just feel like you either rich or you poor and poor working. Like that's how I feel, okay? As somebody who lives here. But anyway, he said that, they're less likely to identify with Trump, at least on paper and surveys. He said it doesn't mean they don't think like that. And we know how misogyny works, okay? But they're less likely to show it in their polling and in their voting patterns. So let me just say this. Polls are indicators, but they aren't the end-all, be-all. And that man was explaining, this is not a read on his work or anything. I'm just making a point because I'm bringing this to you. We know the New York Times fucked up the Hillary Clinton situation, but I never believed that based on polls because I know polls only go so far. And quite frankly, that was more of a dig at the way in which we operate believing it. When people say polls, oh, okay, well, they're winning. I mean, it's Trump's up one day, Kamala is up the next, whatever. All right, but there's also something known as the Tom Bradley effect. So Tom Bradley was the first black mayor of Los Angeles, okay, who ran for first black mayor of Los Angeles, and then he ran for governor of California in the 90s. All right? So, the Tom Bradley effect is something that black political scientists and scholars have come together, named, so on and so forth. Now, he served as mayor of LA for over 20 years, and he ran for governor of California, and he was the presumed winner based on exit polls, like when reporters and stuff like that are asking you who you voted for as you come out the booth. Where a large number of white people in particular, in terms of the people, as they poll, they check race and, that kind of thing. White people in particular, men and women, said, yeah, I just voted for Tom Bradley. And political scientists, like I said, and other scholars concluded that when it was time to pull the lever, to decide who you wanted to run the state, and he would have been the first black governor of California if he had won, they just couldn't vote for a black man to run it. They just couldn't. And he still lost by a pretty thin margin, but they just couldn't do it. And the Tom Bradley effect came up a lot when we saw that Obama was the front runner for the DNC, and eventually he gets the nomination, and then is the main Democratic presidential candidate. People use that as a source of like, yeah, but are white people really gonna do this, right? So please don't let these polls fuck you up. Make sure you vote. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, this is a Kamala channel until November. That does not mean I'm not gonna even. I don't even have to preface that with I don't agree with everything. If you agree with everything somebody does, you don't have no brain. Anyway, make sure you vote blue, okay? Because I'm not trying to be out here in these streets dying unnecessarily. Black people do that. We have that problem anyway, whether it's police or whether it's just white people who murder us and then get off. Anyway, or other people, and then we give the worst to one another and also do extensive harm to one another. Anyway, but I say vote blue to make sure that if Kamala does win, she'll have a Congress, because America disproportionately will vote for a Congress that is antithetical to the president. And I'm like, y'all know he can't pass all these laws that way, right? Civics, come on, civics. All right, now, Barack Obama and black men. I voted for Barack Obama twice. I supported Barack Obama. And I protected him as much as I could because I knew criticisms from white people, once again, adding to that I hate when black people put us in situations like this. There are and were things that have been said and done to him only because he was black. I don't know how much more perfect appearing a family could be in the White House, but he definitely outdid the 43 before him. Period. Hard stop. Okay? Nevertheless, he was giving this talk to black men about who they were voting for and why they're not supporting Kamala Harris, so on and so forth. First of all, and he was meeting in a relatively small place, and he was, basically giving a community talk, but it was just black men there. And I said, first of all, the people who came out to this event are not the people you need to be finger waving at. And that's the shit that I don't like because it's condescending as fuck. Now, he did add a caveat and said, I know you all who are sitting here may not be thinking that way, but Cousin Pookie may. And I'm just sitting up here like, please stop. Please stop with this fake black reference that you only want to be like real down with us when it's convenient, okay? And I say that not simply because he's biracial, but because he plays that game. Because even as he spoke to black men, he didn't say, as he was rightly pointing to the fact that Trump has a history of not only denigrating us not only denigrating black men on a larger scale, like, basically not renting the black people, the things he said, but implying, because Barack Obama is a wizard with words, okay? Implying that, he has this history like Central Park 5, now the exonerated 5, of not wanting you here, right? Or, in a space to be free. But as he talked, he constantly said you and him, referring to you, the black men out there, and Trump. And my thing is, if you want to drive those points home, you need to be more focused and intentional since you've already served your 2 terms and say things more appropriately. That's what he wants to do with us. Because that aspect still is that same shit I didn't like then, I don't like now, in this sort of like, dog whistle to white people. I'm not really completely one of them, which is what and I had great admiration for Michelle. I did, and I felt like the longer they were in office, because I really identified with her as an educated black woman who married somebody who I perceived her to be equally yoked with. And, I hate the term like, people date down or beneath them because, we're all human beings. But quite frankly, birds of a feather should flock together. And women who have typically accomplished more and they marry men who accomplish significantly less tend to have men who are jealous of them, who don't support them, and then they start playing down for them. And so I admired Michelle for having what looked like to be an educated black woman who was not apologetic for it, was still raising 2 kids. It gave me hope. It really did. All right. Now, and this is why I'm going in on Barack Obama, along with black men who keep putting us in these positions publicly. Now, you knew that shit. You were media savvy enough to know how that was going to end up. Nevertheless, it had to be said. Because honestly, the points he was making, I agreed with him. He was right. Okay? But it's one of those right message, wrong messenger. Okay? So Obama has a history of talking down to black men. Need we go down the list? Don't worry. I'll just give you a few examples. See the Morehouse College commencement speech in the year 2013. Okay? Where he's telling people what they need to be doing, not making excuses, so on and so forth. You are talking to hundreds of black male college graduates. Those are not the people that need to be chastised. That's a projection about, no, it's not a projection, but it's certainly an indicator of what you think about black men. Okay? Those were not the people you needed to be doing it. And that being the only historically black male college that even exists, there was no reason for that. You weren't coming down there to speak to them after some sort of, riot in the street. Like, what are you doing, sir? Then him going, and this was when he was president, going to the National Urban League. Well, he was president when he did the Morehouse commencement speech. But him going to the National Urban League, which is up there with the NAACP, fighting for community needs, but also, just like the NAACP, membership tends to be very highly educated, well off, and there's plenty of people who aren't, but I mean, like, really community-based and focused. Him going to National Urban League and chastising black people, saying they need to take off their house shoes and put on their marching shoes, sir, was so derogatory and conjured up negative stereotypes about black people, and certainly black women in particular. That's how you have a habit of talking to the African American community. Your community, the one you depended on to get you over the line, in both terms. You would not have won without the black vote. The black vote, while it is not the majority vote, has, and this is why it's so important for us to vote, and why this is why also voter suppression is a problem. They know how powerful it is. Black people do have the power to sway the votes. And that more than any other group, because they're more consistently aligned with one party. And that's because we experience things regardless of how we look, talk, act, tax bracket. There are some things that only happen to black people, so we have a tendency to identify in that way. All right? And that's how you went and talked to the National Urban League. That's how you talk to your community, the bougie and educated ones at that. You deserve to catch hell for that. Anyway, there was people from the Congressional Black Caucus pissed off with him publicly. You put them in that position. He was one of those black men, and this is what blows me about Barack Obama, because Barack Obama really think we stupid. And I know he has to think we're stupid, because Barack Obama is smart and he's crafty. And, I like Obama enough, but we got to read this shit for what it is. Because like I said, he was right. He was one of those black men back in, July 2024, the end of the month, when Biden dropped out of nowhere and the rest of us were panicking like fuck, because we were like, we're trying to support this old motherfucker because we don't want this crazy motherfucker in here. He was one of the ones that 5 weeks before the Democratic National Convention happened, he is immediately that week calling for an open process, that Kamala shouldn't automatically get it. He's up there with Nancy Pelosi and all this other stuff after Jasmine Crockett had told us. I have been in those rooms, in those meetings as a Democrat. This is all just within like 2-3 days, okay, of Joe Biden endorsing his vice president, which always makes sense. That's why you choose who you choose to be president. And she was like, I've heard them, the Democrats, she's not even talking about the Republicans, the Democrats saying, well, it can't be her, it can't be her. The hostility toward black women and black women in power, y'all who don't think Kamala is black, and then y'all are also the same people who say, I don't vote for people just because they're black. Y'all don't make no sense to me. Y'all can argue with the wall. I'm not the one. All right? Because I have no time for that kind of ignorance. Okay? Now, and he was one of those people. Now, see, my thing is, if you had said, well, maybe most people wouldn't. He didn't acknowledge, hey, I wanted to do, and I realized how terrible that would have been politically. What was I thinking? He didn't do any of that. So also, his talking down to black men about being a father, all 8 years he had that pulpit. I'm not saying that he didn't and should not have encouraged black men to take care of their children, because that is a good thing. However, Michelle has written, spoken about, talked about how Barack would go out to the gym regularly and take care of himself after she had the babies, and she would be home with them by herself. And she was like, well, then that's when I decided I should be working out more and taking care of myself too, with 2 small kids at home. I was like, no, he was being a piece of shit father. He should have been helping you. Taking care of yourself too, yeah, but taking care of your kids is taking care of yourself. And he should have been there helping you, not just going out when he felt like it. So, yeah, for all that projection, Bill Cosby, okay? I'm not saying he raping women, but I'm making a point. He's all this black people committing crimes, and look what he was doing. Anyway, he was also living off of Michelle's money primarily up until he was in the U.S. Senate. Now, we can say they were married and it was their money, but Michelle was the breadwinner. So I'm just saying, why you trying to, finger wag? It's the way he says it, okay? Now, he was right. He was right, okay? And you can't help, honestly, what always makes it out there in the media and the way it's going to be dealt with. I know white people find a lot of glee in being able to hear black people talk to each other that way, even when they don't understand why we're talking to each other a certain way. But Barack Obama's history of doing that is what annoyed me. His words were right, okay? So then, like I said before, he made a larger point. Did I mention that earlier? Maybe I didn't. The larger point when he was talking to that group of black men, that women have been raising us and working and having our backs, along the way. And when we get into trouble and the system is not working for us, they're the ones out there marching and protesting. Facts. He was absolutely right. And this is what I mean with Barack Obama. Barack Obama is smart. He knows what the fucking deal is. But then he'll play these games like he's saying it, but not saying that. That's what I mean. It's that kind of manipulative smart. Not like it's sneaky, it's politician-like, okay? And all I could think, though, was, Barack Obama, sir, you mean like black women did in August 2014? When there was like 3 to 4, I can't remember, 3 to 4 black queer women who started Black Lives Matter on the ground in protesting the murder of 18-year-old Michael Brown when he was shot down like a dog on the street because Darren Wilson felt like he could and did get away with it. When you were president, Black Lives Matter started under you. It didn't start under George Bush. Now, granted, Black Lives Matter, that echo and that call for our lives to be considered worthy extends all the way back to the time the first African hit the shore, okay? And brought here against their will. I'm just saying the Black Lives Matter movement as we know it began then, under you as the first black president. Yeah. When they were saying, those black women were saying, yes, you need to say something, and not just say something, do something because you had that kind of power, and you didn't? Are those black women, those are the ones you're referring to? Then now you want black men to respect the black men who were watching you and looking up to you? And then you trying to find a way to act like these people don't exist? Baby. And that you helped disrespect by ignoring, not supporting legislation that would have been helpful to Michael Brown's mother, another black woman, Leslie McSpadden, and the pain she had to endure, that's still enduring. I heard her speak, she really was just, that kind of cry, that kind of grief, I know it. I don't know if to have a child like that, but to lose somebody. And she was speaking to us, this was like 2021, at a conference. As she stood in the street screaming and crying and was inconsolable that her son, who had gone just to a corner store, comes out and is murdered like a fucking dog by a cop for something he did not even fucking do. And then barely 3 months later, a 70% white grand jury decided that they would not indict Darren Wilson. Those black women, those are the ones you want to defend now? Sir, right message, wrong messenger. And I think, Barack Obama, you don't have, I don't know, maybe with some people, I still, I have to be honest, there's a level of respect I have for Barack Obama, period. Because I think Barack Obama has the ability to hold himself and his dignity and his poise, and he's smart. I just wish he didn't always use it to be politically cunning, because he's reached the highest heights. And he was also one of those black men, once again, calling for an open process, knowing that the vice president should be the one taking over, because it seems to me you didn't want a black woman in charge. Nancy Pelosi didn't want a black woman in charge. So let's not trip. Let's not trip. Okay. Now, so that's just my take on it. But he was right about what he said. Now, I want that to be clear. All right. Speaking of another black man conspiracy. This motherfucker, I am so tired of hearing about Diddy, I don't know what the fuck to do. All this stuff is triggering as fuck, so I'm not going to get in the nitty gritty. I'm not reporting that kind of shit every time something comes out. Not because I don't care about those people, but because it's just too much. Nevertheless, according to Business Insider, this week, Combs attorney Mark Infilio and Tinny Geragos, you need to fire them people, by the way, but I'm going to keep reading the insider thing that I'm basing this on. So, the Business Insider, you can look it up, made the allegations in the filing to the federal judge in Manhattan now assigned to the case. They are demanding the judge hold an evidentiary hearing to examine the government misconduct in connection with the leaks, they wrote. They are also demanding that prosecutors and other members of the government be gagged to prevent leaking to the media, and that officials, in particular agents with the Department of Homeland Security, be ordered to turn over emails, documents, and records related to the alleged leaks, according to the motion. If they're alleged, how can you make them turn it over? Okay. Anyway, so Homeland Security was singled out in the defense motion, though prosecutors with the Department of Justice's U.S. Attorney Office were also accused of failing to stop the leaks despite repeated behind-the-scenes complaints by the defense. All DOJ employees, Department of Justice, not just as attorneys, are barred by federal law from releasing prejudicial information for the purpose of influencing a trial, the filing says. Regardless of what, if any, action the U.S. Attorney's Office took, the leaks continued even after the arrest, the motion states. The reason a hearing is needed is to exterminate exactly what DHS did and did not do regarding these leaks, and what the U.S. Attorney's Office did and did not do to stop them, his lawyers wrote. Spokespersons of the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan did not immediately respond to Wednesday night's filing. And then Diddy goes on to say that this, well, his lawyer is going to say, you know, this is racially motivated. Diddy's been saying it's racially motivated. And that the Cassie tape, he believes they helped leak to ensure that they would destroy the public perception of him before he went on trial. Once again, I hate when black people put us in this position. Diddy, there are places where I just don't fuck with the bullshit, and this is one of them. You beat that young woman. That was horrific. I don't think it should have made the news either. But the only reason why I believe it shouldn't have made the news, and when it first was dropped, they didn't even give people trigger warnings or anything. That was horrible. You did that. And when you beat somebody like that, that damn sure wasn't the first time. She wasn't running because that was the first time. You did that perpetually. Get the fuck up out of here. Get the fuck up out of here. And see, the thing is, to be fair, there is a history. Because I don't want people saying, yeah, see, black people always... Black people know, most of us who are not completely delusional, know exactly that it is hard being black and racism exists. It's everywhere. I'm not even suggesting that Diddy isn't going to experience racism in this process. But that's also not the issue right now. I mean, it's not the issue that he wants it to be. There is a history of doing this to black men in particular when they make it up a certain tax bracket, when they're successful, accomplished, make it up the ladder, we can call the roll, okay? Because we know that this has happened over and over again. But Diddy, you don't make the list. And as far as I'm concerned, all the artists that you have cheated out of their money, and therefore that's why you have money for lawyers and homes, and your kids are financially taken care of in ways their kids are not, I don't give a fuck. I don't. You and R. Kelly can duke it out in the prison boxing match or something like that. I don't give a fuck. Okay? Because the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, please note that that agency was created specifically to spy on immigrants that they thought were bringing in, that were spies from places like Russia and stuff like that. People who were, Jewish, suspicious, and they used it to consistently undermine African American activists, even going back to A. Philip Randolph in the 30s and 40s, who was a socialist fighting for black people's rights. And the organizer of the Pullman Porters Union for black men on the railroad. That being said, all right, we do have to consider that's true. That's not true for you, though. And I'm damn sure not going to get out here defending a black man who is perpetually abusing black women. Okay? I felt sad for those young girls who were entering court, who clearly, yeah, I know it was their father's arraignment, but he should have been selfless enough to maybe say the girls should stay home. Because that was a real narcissistic move. It was. It was. To have your whole family come out there holding hands. One I thought was just his girlfriend, but it was his daughter. But, them trying to keep a smile on their face and stuff like that. That's by his demand. You should have protected them more. All right. So anyway, we know we can call the roll, like, even now. All right. And then let's not get into, we can't get into COINTELPRO. Because they're still trying to strip and rip Martin Luther King Jr.'s accomplishments and his help for the community. The same man who died poor, who gave his money all to the movement when he got the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize and didn't bring any of that home, knowing him and Coretta Scott King were struggling. And that's why when he died, Coretta Scott King had to go out there and make her money by giving speeches and advocating, so on and so forth, because they were living in poverty for the sake of the greater good, because he took a vow of poverty and he fought for black people's rights. And they're still trying to rip him of his reputation because he had extramarital affairs. When we only know the details of this because of COINTELPRO. And when they told Martin Luther King Jr. that we know about your affairs, and J. Edgar Hoover, who was running the FBI, said to him he had to commit suicide or they would tell his wife. What the fuck? And they sent those tapes to her. They stay on their word when it comes to stuff like that. People go through things. And nobody should be more bothered than Coretta Scott King was while she was here on earth with us than she was in her entire life. The whole, he's not a good person, he was doing this and that, and he was it. So, some of y'all need to go back and do your research. So, some of y'all whip men who's doing that right now. So, his wife ain't upset, and you think his kids and family want to hear about that all the fucking time? So, your daddy ain't perfect either. So, shit, some of y'all really need to go back and read and do your research, okay? And be grateful to God that that man put his life on the line while his family sacrificed for it. And many others did too. He didn't live perfectly. So, okay? But he also wasn't raping and drugging and physically abusing women either. Because trust me, if they had it, they'd show it. All right? They are actively talking y'all out of appreciating our heroes. Because y'all don't read or y'all are mad at black men in the current state. I can tell you, you take Martin Luther King out of history and you tell me And I don't need people in the comments. Well, there was other people helping. Of course it was. Of course, it's a movement for a reason. Okay? But he led that. You know how much fucking restraint it takes to not get violent with people? No, because they don't want us to love the people who lead us in the right direction. The majority of black people didn't even support him at the time of his death. Or clergymen who claim to love the same Jesus that he had. So miss me with the bullshit. They still trying to tell us how we should feel about Malcolm X and when we should speak. There has certainly been a conspiracy. The way COINTELPRO had black organizations like the Black Panther Party and the US organization fighting each other, thinking one was saying something about the other, thinking SNCC was saying something about the other, pitting them against each other is one of the most extreme, vicious, and horrendous destructions of a political and social movement that ever happened. So trust and believe the FBI has been designed for that in particular. The MOVE organization in Philadelphia, look it up. So we're not going to sit here and say that there isn't. What I am going to say, though, is it don't apply to you, motherfucker. So come up off of it. And that's all I got to say for the moment. Shout out to Kamala. Kamala, I can tell, you got your second cover of Vogue. You don't have to do much. You one of those who walk in and everybody's head turns. You are beautiful. I wish they would have let you smile. I know somebody tried to make you feel bad. Well, if you're a woman who smiles in the cover and you're running for president. The only thing I worry about with Kamala right now is when I've seen her in interviews, and it's just something I read. I can't prove this, but as a black woman, I know that look in her face is not sleepy tired, but this shit can get to you. And black women aren't allowed the space to have emotions. Like Hillary Clinton when she was crying and running for president. That shit, fuck you. I don't give a shit about them tears. And we know people care about her tears. And it just gives me that look, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And I know she's going to be all right, because that's black women, that's what we do, but we shouldn't have to. And we certainly shouldn't have to, and we need to do a better job of supporting one another, and black men need to get your vote together. But that's all I have to say. Please, you are welcome to comment, but stay out of my comments with the foolishness. The black men and then the white men who come under there. Yeah, black men are finally waking up. To what? Slavery? What is going on? Anyway, y'all have a good weekend. I'll talk to y'all soon. See you later.